mic, just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage, and I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares, nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc, I rip to a tear. Switch a scenario on stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away, asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Once again with your host, Nick Bernabe, here on UCY.tv. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'm really happy to be back with you. Surviving again, another show. I mean, sorry I missed out on Monday. I wish I could have been on the show, but both of our regular co-hosts were busy, and I was dealing with this horrible toothache, and it was just, Monday was unbearable. Doing a little better now, so I'm hoping to put together a really good panel for you tonight and talk about a bunch of the stuff going on, because there's just all kinds of news happening, and just a lot of really horrible things going on around the world that hopefully, you know, between us and the people listening to this show and, you know, the people that are, you know, going to be calling in, we can, you know, work together to stop this horrible stuff from happening, because we're getting to the point now where it's becoming very, very urgent to get the upper hand from this crazy, insane government that's just looking to start a huge war, and you know, that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. I'm dealing with the microphone issue here.
Hey Nick, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Could you hear me?
Yeah, man. I was just going to say, lest we all forget, it's definitely not just us that want what's coming. I mean, it's really the global elite. We gotta look at it that way. Don't look at nations and countries. Just imagine these fools are in cahoots trying to make this war happen and trying to sell it to us.
Exactly, man. Exactly. I mean, it's not inevitable. I mean, we could put an end to not only this war that's coming, but you know, I think human beings are getting to the point where information and technology is spreading around relatively freely enough that we can put an end to wars on Earth forever. You know, and that's a goal that I would love to be a part of. Can you still hear me, DB? I'm sorry, man. I'm having some mic.
Yeah, you're good.
Because it says my microphone is muted, but it's obviously not. So I'm just gonna roll.
Have you been delaying your Skype update indefinitely like me?
That's the thing, is that I haven't updated my Skype yet, and because last time I updated it, I had a bunch of issues and a bunch of bugs, and
then it goes to auto update. So, you know, if anybody gets the Skype update, just deny.
Kind of like Windows 10, huh? So I got Windows 10 now too, so I'm dealing with a whole new operating system. Anyway, so we're going to have some interesting callers on, hopefully. I'm not sure if Jake's going to be around tonight, but I'm hoping Jake calls in. I think Claire was talking about calling in because her and I have both been really covering this, what's been going on with, Syria, Russia, and, the United States and this kind of, working up to World War III scenario. And it's just really, really frightening stuff. So first I'm gonna go look and start reading out of my article, and so hopefully everyone listening tonight either read it, or you can go over there to it now, or you can just listen to what I'm going to say about it, because Hillary Clinton is just openly, and we talked about this last Wednesday, how Hillary Clinton is kind of one of the first candidates in the recent era of presidential candidates to openly run on a more hawkish platform than what their predecessor implemented. Because most times what happens, at least dating back to George W. Bush, is the candidate will run on a more dovish platform than his predecessor. So, George W. Bush, believe it or not, and I didn't believe this when I first heard about this, because S.M. Gibson, the guy who hosts our Tuesdays and Thursday shows, he was the one that first told me. He's like, "No, man, when George W. Bush ran for president, he was like running against nation building and saying that we should have a more, common sense foreign policy. We shouldn't be policing the world." I didn't believe it, but then I went and I was looking up the speeches and stuff, and sure enough, George W. Bush was running against what Bill Clinton was doing over in like Serbia and Kosovo with the nation building and stuff over there. And so I found that very interesting. Now, of course, we all know that George W. Bush, once he got elected, he went and created the War on Terror, toppled the governments of both Iraq and Afghanistan, and kind of set his sights with the Project for the New American Century, which is this neocon kind of think tank plan to take over the Middle East. And they really set their sights on like a bunch of different countries over there in the Middle East. And, really, really...
The project, Nick, remember the doctrine McChrystal let out of the bag and said we have 7 countries we're going to go after, and it doesn't really matter what order. We're just going to get it done. And it's all on the path to finally taking out our biggest creditor, the Red Dragon, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the end game, truly? So that now all of our debt is completely wiped. And if everybody on the surface of the Earth's gone, so what?
Yeah. As crazy as it is, these guys have been hell-bent on kind of world domination for a long time. I'm gonna pull up that clip that you were mentioning, DB. We played it before, but it's been like a year since we played it. But I am going to pull that up. But first, let's go over my article today because, it's a really sensational headline, even though it's completely true. Media blackout. Hillary Clinton calls for killing a, quote, a lot of civilians and starting a war with Russia. Now, so a lot of people commenting were, without reading, were like, no, that's bullshit. I can't believe that, but I broke it down in the article very, in plain English here. And I'm going to play the clip here at the end as well, but, let me just kind of break it down real quick. Hillary Clinton has been advocating putting a no-fly zone in place in Syria for a pretty long time, and she reiterated that in the debate on Sunday against Trump. Now, at the beginning of this article, it's kind of like, the media literally didn't cover it. I went on Google and I was trying to search for a mainstream media source that I could cite in my article to kind of see what they were trying to say about Hillary Clinton talking about this no-fly zone. There's literally not one single article on the entire internet that I was able to find today, and I spent a good 30 minutes on Google looking for something, that talks about or even mentions or at the very least critiques Hillary Clinton's plan to create a no-fly zone in Syria, because that itself, is a very, very dangerous prospect. Now,
and why are they painting our jets in blue? I mean, do they really think we didn't get that photo and that didn't circulate around?
Yeah, that's something we're thinking about covering that on the anti-media as well.
That's horrifying, Nick. They're gonna fly into some place and kill a bunch of people and pretend it was the Russians.
Yeah, and so that is very interesting. There was a journalist over there at one of the bases where they're using a staging area to fly, sorties or whatever you want to call it, bombing missions over Syria. And yeah, the U.S. jets, we all know what U.S. jets look like. They're like that dull gray color. Almost all of our jets, except for maybe like the Blue Angels, which are like for show. Almost all of the U.S. military jets are all the same color, that dull gray, right? The stealths are black, but other than that, they're all that gray color. So, a journalist photographed these jets painted up in the Syrian colors, and so that's very, very strange, to say the least.
I thought the sky blue were actually the Russian Air Force. Am I mistaken?
I mean, they said that they were painting them as Russian and Syrian, so I don't know. So anyway, with this no-fly zone, here's the thing. Last time the United States implemented a no-fly zone was in Libya. And who can recall what happened in Libya? Well, we overthrew their government after we said we were just going to do a no-fly zone because we were supposedly going to protect their people from their government. Sounds very, very similar to what's about to, or what Hillary Clinton wants to do in Syria, right? The exact same thing she did in Libya, because also keeping in mind, Clinton was the main person who was able to convince Obama, who was actually reluctant to do what happened in Syria, to do the no-fly zone and to topple the Syrian government. Obama was reluctant. But Hillary Clinton was actually the person who lobbied Obama and convinced him that that was the right thing to do. So that's what ended up happening. They had no plan in place to deal with the aftermath. The people that they were backing against Gaddafi, a lot of them were actually extremists. I mean, this is like deja vu, right? Because that's exactly what's going on in Syria. We keep talking about wanting to, Assad must go, Assad must go. We've got to get rid of the Syrian government. We got to have someone in there who isn't Assad. Well, the people that we're backing over there, they're being dominated right now. The two groups that are fighting, the three groups that are fighting very well right now in Syria is the Kurds, who are quote unquote our allies, but will never give them any kind of legitimate government of their own because we're too worried about the geopolitical implications, and our allies in Turkey and stuff will never let that happen. So that's out of the question. In fact, our ally, quote unquote ally Turkey, is actually in Syria right now fighting against the Kurds, who we're supposedly backing. I mean, it's just so confusing over there. The other group that's fighting very well over there, and I'm talking about everyone but the Syrian government, is the al-Nusra Front, which is more or less an affiliate of Al-Qaeda in Syria, and they're the group that really is dominating all of the effective fighting. I mean, a lot of the arms, a lot of the weapons that we're sending into the Free Syrian Army and the quote-unquote moderate rebels, they wind up either being in the hands of al-Nusra or wind up with fighters who end up allying themselves with the al-Nusra Front. Al-Nusra Front is basically a very extreme, hardline Wahhabist Islamic group, which is very, very similar to ISIS. The other group over there that's fighting is ISIS. That's the other group that's fighting very well. So it's a very, very precarious situation, and the United States really doesn't have anybody that they can fall back on over there. And so when Hillary Clinton talks about putting in a no-fly zone, we have to remember what they did in Libya, and remember that now Libya, looking at the place, is it even a country anymore? I mean, it's completely fractured apart. It's been going through a civil war since 2011 when we toppled the government. It's been 4 years, and we've kind of left them to their own devices for the most part. I mean, we still got drones over there that drop bombs on people, but other than that, where's the aid? Where's the convoys? Where's Europe? Where's France? Where's Italy? Where's England? All of these people were advocating bombing this place. They bombed it, knocked out the government. It turned into a civil war, and everybody just puts their hands in the air like, well, that's on you guys. You guys got to deal with it now. Like, what are we doing? It's ridiculous, man. It really is really, really bad.
From isn't it from order or militarized police forces?
Yeah, dude. It's just like, God, dude. It just really, really makes me mad.
Speaking of which, man, I don't know if this was a story that kind of it flew under the radar, but in Portland, apparently the city did not let any of the citizens know what the contract with the PD was going to be through the union. It was kept behind doors, and that's actually illegal. And they decided to say, no, it isn't. Well, who's going to stop us? And people came down to the courthouse to stop that, and they were assaulted and beaten and pepper sprayed. And then guess what? Ambulances wouldn't come because the ambulance company or the EMS is in cahoots with the PD. Can you imagine how a city now from top to bottom is corrupt? Portland, Oregon.
Dude, it's just...
Can you imagine that, dude? The ambulances wouldn't come because the police told them not to, and they're in cahoots. Even the ambulances, dude.
Oh, man, that's ridiculous. And you're talking about here in Portland?
Yeah, man. So I hope Jake calls in because I want to know what the hell's going on. This is the tip. This is the line in the sand. If you allow something like this to happen, they will never stop. It's just going to continue to get worse. There has to be somewhere where you bring them what they don't want, and that is just a massive insurrection.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's just...
If you don't know what the city's paying the police, don't know how they're being paid, because they kept it all under lock and key and aren't releasing these records, meaning that they're extorting you because you're paying taxes with no receipt. This is unprecedented in American history.
That's crazy, man. Let's get into that. Let's talk about some more of that because I haven't even heard about this yet, and let's hope Jake calls in and he knows something about this. Let me get through this article here because it was kind of a long one, and I was like really happy that it went pretty viral because a lot of times when I write these like long geopolitical articles that I really like put a lot of time into, and this is the kind of stuff that I actually like writing about. A lot of times they don't go anywhere because it's hard for people to understand them because it's just because the mess over there is so complicated. It's really hard to break it down to where it's like understandable because there's just so many things going on, and that's why people that listen to this show on a regular basis are so well informed. I think that a lot of people, like the general public, when I share my articles with people, it's kind of hard for them to understand, but I know everyone listening to the show tonight is like on board with this stuff, and we're kind of on the same page here, and that's why it's kind of important to listen to our shows on a regular basis. You don't have to listen to all of them, but on a regular basis, because we break through and like kind of decode a lot of this political talk that goes on, because most of it is just fluff, like this no war zone, this no fly zone talk. It's fluff. I mean, a no-fly zone sounds amazing. It sounds like so nice. It's like, oh, we don't even gotta like kill anybody. A no-fly zone? That's people from dying over there? Sure, let's do it. That's what the average person probably thinks.
Have you seen the think tank estimates of what it would cost to do a no-fly zone in Syria? So they anticipate we would suffer 70,000 casualties as a result of trying to take out Russia's anti-aircraft batteries, because they're dug in. So I don't know, what was Vietnam, 36,000? So this would be double Vietnam right away. Like it'd be an instant 70K kill. Like you can't even imagine how many people would go so fast trying to take out those SAMs.
That was an estimate also. Yeah, I included that in the article, and it was taken from a quote from where is he? General Martin E. Dempsey. He actually made that estimate before the Russians were actually on the ground over there. So a according to what I read, there's a great article over on Al Jazeera about this. The estimates now are much higher. I mean, it could be like 100,000 ground troops to go in there to dismantle their anti-aircraft systems and stuff like that.
So if 100K go in and 30K come out, is that something we're willing to live with?
Exactly, and that's the question here. I mean, everyone's running around talking about how Donald Trump is reckless, Donald Trump is crazy, Donald Trump is this, and Donald Trump is that. They're right. I mean, I agree. I'm the biggest critic of Donald Trump out there. I mean, how many times have we slammed Donald Trump for being an ignorant, racist,
He slams himself every day he wakes up, but let's be real. He's not going to fight Putin. Maybe China. We talked about that. Maybe 3-4 years from now. But fighting Russia is suicidal to the average American citizen.
It is. And the other thing we got to be honest about is that Trump is not going to win. Trump was never going to win. Trump was never, ever going to get close to the presidency. That's just the way it was. And, that's just how it is. And we could talk about that on another episode. But, the thing is that, everyone wants to go at Trump, right? So I got a couple of headlines here because, like I mentioned, the media has literally ignored how reckless Hillary Clinton's call for a no-fly zone in Syria really is. Because, like I said, I was looking everywhere to find news stories about somebody had to criticize Hillary Clinton's stance on this, right? Somebody had to do it. And
Hillary Clinton criticized her own stance on this.
Claire, I was wondering if you were here. Okay, I'm glad we got you.
She actually, in the leaked emails, in the Podesta files, her campaign chair, she actually said that the possibility of waging war in Syria would kill a lot of Syrians. I mean, she made her own argument against no-fly zone. She said that earlier. And now in the latest debate, she's saying, oh, we should have no-fly zones. Like, well aware that it's going to kill a lot of Syrians who are obviously innocent and have nothing to do with it in a country where they're already being killed at a record rate. I mean, it's rather absurd.
Exactly. And so, that's why I went with this crazy title called Hillary Clinton Calls for Killing a Lot, quote, a lot of civilians, because that was literally her words, not mine. So the media coverage about the no-fly zone, you guys are going to lose it when I tell you this, because like I said, I was searching up and down looking for somebody to criticize Hillary Clinton. Nobody did. What they did do was criticize Trump for saying he didn't want a no-fly zone. So the headline at the Huffington Post, Trump throws Mike Pence under the bus at the debate. The headline at Foreign Policy magazine, Trump shrugs off scandal, backs Russia, and throws Pence under the bus. And here's my favorite line from the article. Washington Post has the best title, dumbed down for the appropriate audience. Mike Pence says Donald Trump didn't throw him under the bus, but Trump really, really did. And what they mean by Trump throwing Pence under the bus was that in the vice presidential debate, Mike Pence basically advocated a no-fly zone in Syria. And in the last debate, Trump said that he didn't. So, he contradicted Mike Pence. And so all of the media coverage surrounding the talk of a no-fly zone in Syria from the debate was slamming Donald Trump for saying that he didn't want a no-fly zone. And so that to me just tells you how hawkish the mainstream media is in the United States, because they're literally taking Hillary Clinton's advocating of a no-fly zone. They're taking it in stride as if all right, cool, we're just getting ready to sell this to the American people. When she becomes president, we're going to sell this no-fly zone to people, and we're going to go do it. I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting from the media coverage. Anyway.
Well, considering that the media is complicit, and it's been proven through all the leaked emails and documents and everything else, I mean, mainstream media is literally complicit with the DNC, with Hillary and Clinton. I mean, it has been proven time and time again, and the Podesta leaks actually further that evidence. So is it really any surprise that they're backing her in every possible way? I mean, it's absurd. They focus on every little thing about Donald Trump and refuse to admit anything about Hillary, and then criticize WikiLeaks for releasing, information about Hillary Clinton and not about Trump, when they are ignoring the fact that somebody has to actually leak Trump information to WikiLeaks in order for WikiLeaks to release it. And I mean, it is a one-sided campaign for a reason.
Exactly. And that's why I've been saying that it's just let's forget about this idea of Trump being elected. It's just not going to happen. Every single institution in the United States is working against him, except for like Breitbart and Drudge Report. I mean, that's not enough to win an election. I'm sorry. Even the Republican Party is working against Donald Trump. I mean, this is he literally never had a chance from the beginning. He was elevated and legitimized, and we know that because of the leaks that have been coming out as well by Hillary Clinton, by the media. The media gave him like $2 billion in free media coverage. They built him up in order to break him down. I mean, it was all part of the plan to get Hillary Clinton elected. I mean, I hate to sound conspiracy theorist about this, but I mean, this is documented fact at this point. The DNC emails prove it. But anyway, I mean, back to this no-fly zone thing. According to General Dempsey, requires 70,000 troops on the ground. That was before the Russians were involved. The Russians are involved now. It would probably be more like 100,000 troops on the ground. I have the quote, and again, this comes from WikiLeaks, or not from WikiLeaks, but WikiLeaks leaked this information. It was from one of Hillary Clinton's Goldman Sachs speeches that she, remember when Bernie Sanders was like prodding her to release these Goldman Sachs speeches and she never would? Well, part of them finally came out thanks to WikiLeaks. And this is a direct excerpt from one of the speeches to Goldman Sachs. Quote, and this is Hillary Clinton talking. To have a no-fly zone, you have to take out all of the air defense, many of which are located in populated areas. So our missiles, even if they are standoff missiles, so we're not putting our pilots at risk, you're going to kill a lot of civilians. So all of a sudden, this intervention that people talk about so glibly becomes an American and NATO involvement where you take a lot of civilians. That is what Hillary Clinton said in her speech to Goldman Sachs. She basically said, look, if we do a no-fly zone, a bunch of Syrian civilians are going to die. This speech probably happened, I don't know, a year or two ago. I'm not sure when she was selling her speaking time to Goldman Sachs for an obscene amount of money. But, there you have it. Clinton is over here advocating a no-fly zone in Syria, knowing damn well that they're going to have to bomb out a bunch of air defenses in Syria that are surrounded by civilian populated areas. And so when Clinton talks about creating a no-fly zone, and she's already said that creating a no-fly zone would kill civilians, she's basically saying, I'm okay with killing civilians. And this is the kind of sick, twisted person that Hillary Clinton is. She doesn't mind killing countless innocent people.
But you have to remember the thing is, I mean, no matter who it is that's going to be in office, the fact is, right now, we have someone still in office, for another few months who is actively trying to get us into World War III. So, before even these people get into office, we might be screwed. And it is a really precipitous situation. I mean, we are very close to the brink of war right now. So regardless of what it is that they say that they're going to do and what we know that they're going to do, and particularly Hillary Clinton, who is very, she's just the worst warmonger. And it will get worse with her. I agree with you. But right now, we are so close, it might not even really matter who it is that next sits in the Oval Office.
Yeah, very true. And that's why it's so important now. It's so time sensitive that people need to activate themselves in the anti-war mode.
It's scary you say activate, Nick, because imagine the thousands of cells that are inside our borders right now, and they will activate if it gets to World War III.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's the time is now to put a stop to all this, warmongering and all of this escalation of potential violence. Because if people wait too long and keep believing that Barack Obama is some kind of anti-war candidate, he's not. I mean, he's done more foreign policy actions in more countries than George Bush ever did.
And what's fascinating is in '52 we signed this peace accord with Japan. A lot of people don't know that. But anyway, the peace accord says we can't legally declare war, and if we ever do, that Japan would instantly declare war on us. I don't know. People should maybe look that up.
I never heard of that, but I know Japan is remilitarizing right now as well, because we're not only dealing with the quote unquote Western Front in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe. We're also dealing with the increased likelihood of a military conflict with China over in the South China Sea. And that's something we've been covering on the Anti-Media and on Underground Reporter as well.
I have actually been trying, and actually this seems like a good point to bring it up. I have been trying to introduce an anti-war campaign, because right now this is actually a very critical situation. We really are in a very critical situation. There are a number of analysts who say that where we are right now is actually far worse than where we were in the Cuban Missile Crisis. And for those unfamiliar, that was perhaps the greatest likelihood before that we would end up in nuclear war. So for people to say that we're in a worse situation now, this is actually much, much worse. And I'm kind of proposing, and I would like to bring in all of alt media and as many other groups as possible who are against war to start basically a No War with Russia campaign under the No War with Russia hashtag, and where the reason that I wanted to focus on Russia is because the U.S. versus Russia actually plays out in so many different theaters. Like that would play out in Syria. That would play out along Russia's borders with where NATO is building up. It would also play out in the Asia Pacific theater. And if we use the hashtag No War with Russia whenever we post articles and memes, and when we are trying to bring in friends and people unfamiliar with the situation, we can post the No War with Russia hashtag and also the country, that happens to be the focus. So, for instance, if we're talking about, say, something going on in Syria, where, like in the past, where the U.S. actually hit Assad's troops, we can use the No War with Russia hashtag and also use the hashtag Syria to highlight the fact that they are related issues. Because this is incredibly serious. This is a very, very precipitous situation. We are on the brink of war, and there is a distinct possibility that it might be a nuclear war. And I don't think that people are yet taking it seriously enough. And this is the prime opportunity. And for those unaware, in 2013, alternative media pretty much helped facilitate public awareness to stop Obama's campaign for a war with Syria. I believe that it's at least worth a try doing that again right now with Russia and everything else, because the possibility, both sides are building up nuclear warheads. It's increasingly dangerous. It just seems like a prime opportunity to me.
And not to rehash, but the arguments about people not fleeing the new nukes, not the 1944 nuke, but the new one that doesn't leave any radiation, or it leaves it for 30 days, they have no problem. Don't think they won't throw them back and forth and stay underground for 30 days while all of us are done.
I'm totally on board. No war with Russia. Nothing is worth a mutually destructive nuclear war. This World War III, do I need to say the famous quote again? I think it was Einstein. Maybe it's misattributed, but it's so true. I don't know what weapons World War III will be fought with, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Very telling quote there, because basically what he's saying is World War III is going to be so destructive that all forms of intelligent life will be wiped out, and what's left will be people back in the Stone Age, and that's
or the worst psychopathic people ever.
That's what we're dealing with right now, is the possibility of a mutually destructive war that would trigger alliances between Russia and China. Does anybody in the world want to fight China? Let alone Russia, but China.
Well, it's China, and you have now the Philippines aligning behind, and you have North Korea. The situation right now is literally looking a lot like the Axis and the Allies. It is lining up exactly that way. It's needless. A lot of it is caused by United States propaganda. There honestly has been not much Russian aggression, if any. And the Clinton campaign and the Obama administration has capitalized on what little Russian aggression there has been and blown it way out of proportion, officially accusing Russia of being the hackers behind the DNC leaks is pretty much the height of stupidity. There is too much debate behind and too much contention behind who actually leaked those documents. It's not founded. It's not decisive. And for the U.S. to declare that the Russian government was behind that, okay, the United States says that cyber terrorism could facilitate, in some instances, a military response. And I don't think people are necessarily taking that seriously enough. So for the U.S. to declare that Russia is behind those hacks, it's basically saying that it can, in theory, respond militarily to that in a quote-unquote defensive measure. So the U.S. is in a position at this point to actually respond militarily, to actually make a first strike against Russia. And if Russia responds to that, Russia has China, North Korea, Iran. It has too many allies behind it. This would be all-out war. We are really on the precipice right now. This is very, very serious, and I don't think people realize how close we actually are.
And,
don't forget Pakistan and India will immediately go nuclear.
Exactly.
And, the other thing, too, is that we can't forget that the U.S. has been quietly fomenting, or not so quietly if you've been paying attention, fomenting revolutions in anybody that's been kind of close to Russia. I mean, look at what happened in Ukraine, successful color revolution. And I don't want to discount the organic movements in these countries, because I know there's organic movements that genuinely did want a revolution in Ukraine, and that in Syria genuinely wanted a revolution, and also in Libya. But two of Russia's closest allies in Ukraine and Syria have recently experienced these kind of violent upheavals, and the United States is, quote unquote, coincidentally there as soon as anything pops off to be like, hey guys, we got your back. We're going to give you weapons. We're going to give you training. We're going to give you arms. We're going to help you fight against all of Russia's allies. And it's basically, that's exactly what's happening. And anytime these governments fight back, well, then they're killing off their citizenry. They're repressing, democratic movements. Anytime it happens in a country that is a U.S. ally, like or falls under the sphere of influence of the United States or NATO, like for instance Yemen, when there's an organic movement or an uprising there, well, we back the government and help them kill people and kill the uprising. And so there's a huge kind of disconnect there between, what's okay and what's not okay, because war crimes are okay to be committed by the U.S.-backed coalition in Yemen. We're allowed to bomb funerals, for instance, which just happened a couple days ago. 140 people got blown up at a funeral in Yemen. 500 people were injured. That's okay. That's fine. That's not a war crime. That's fine, because it's our buddies who we gave, it was American bombs that fell, which were dropped by our buddies' planes. That's okay. But in Syria, because they're Russian allies, and because Russia's also fighting on behalf of the Syrian government, if something happens, a funeral gets hit, a hospital gets hit, or civilians die, it's a war crime. So there's a complete hypocrisy. There's zero, connection there between reality. It's like, well, if our guys commit war crimes, it's not a war crime, it's an accident. And if if the other guys commit war crimes, well, it's definitely a war crime, it's not an accident.
But what about, okay, the Podesta emails have also revealed that Hillary Clinton knew, Hillary Clinton's team knew in 2014, and it seemed obvious by the emails that they'd known a lot longer than that Saudi Arabia has been financially and strategically funding and arming ISIS, essentially, the Islamic State. So if they knew back in 2014 that was happening, if Hillary Clinton knew that, if anybody had any integrity whatsoever, then they would be saying, we are no longer going to fund and arm Saudi Arabia because they are funding and arming the terrorists that we created that we're trying to fight.
Yeah,
I mean, the irony of the situation is like it's too much to even handle if you really think about it. But if that were really the case, then we would be stopping funding Saudi Arabia, and we're not doing that.
Isn't there like a UN embargo on any kind of state-funded terrorism? Like you can't sell weapons to anybody any country that's funding terrorism. You can't sell them weapons, right?
Yeah, and it does not have to be state. It does not have to be a state terrorist organization. This is like, I mean, even beyond whatever international law might exist, this is fundamental ethics. And think about the irony here. The U.S. is providing billions, like multiple tens of billions of dollars to Saudi Arabia in not only cash, but also, fighter jets and weapons and advanced machinery and GPS-enabled bombs. I mean, we are providing all of this to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is actively, according to the email that Hillary sent in 2014, providing those things to ISIS. The U.S. created ISIS. We're supposedly fighting ISIS as well. I mean, this is, if there were ever any more evidence that this war was a fake creation simply to fund the military machine, this is it. And the problem is that the victims of this are the innocent civilians in the Middle East and elsewhere, and the taxpayers in the U.S. who are funding this bullcrap that nobody wants to fund. We are funding the slaughter of innocent civilians everywhere, and it is shit, and it's infuriating. I mean, if you really look at the big picture, this is infuriating.
And the only people truly benefiting from this, the only people actually truly benefiting from this, is the military-industrial complex, the people that build the bombs and the weapons. Because look at it. We sell the weapons to Saudi Arabia by the billions. Saudi Arabia hands it over to ISIS. We go and drop bombs on ISIS. And the only guys actually making money and winning are the guys making the bombs. Because look, Saudi Arabia, their strategy in the Middle East has stalled out. They've wasted billions of dollars. They've flooded the place with arms. A bunch of people are dying. Saudi Arabia has not successfully accomplished its goal of toppling the Syrian government or
because they're not trying to.
Yeah. Or any
They're not trying to in the first place. They're not trying to because if they actually tried to decimate the terrorists in the Middle East anywhere, in Yemen or in Syria or anywhere, if they were actually trying to decimate the terrorists, then they'd lose the vehicle for their funding. They'd lose the vehicle to get the funding from the U.S., to get the fighter planes and everything else, to provide it to ISIS and it's a big cycle.
Well, that's what I mean. Saudi Arabia, the reason they're funding ISIS is because they're using ISIS as a proxy to go topple the Syrian government, right? But they failed. Their strategy failed. It stalled out. They can't even take back control of Yemen, which is a tiny country, the poorest country in the world that's right on their border. They can't even beat the ragtag rebels, the Houthi rebels in Yemen. They're dropping tons and tons of bombs every day, blowing up funerals. They can't take back Yemen. In fact,
they have no intention to.
Are now the Houthi rebels have advanced into Saudi Arabia and are ambushing Saudi Arabian convoys inside of Saudi Arabia. I mean, Saudi Arabia, all the money in the world is not going to save them. They've lost. They're losing. They've stalled out. And so Saudi Arabia isn't winning. They're doing horrible deeds over there, funding ISIS, giving them training, intelligence. Who knows what else they're doing? They're losing.
And if we ever, I hate to say the DAPL because it shouldn't be, but if they were ever to tap what Canada had up there and everything that they could do, they could cut Saudi Arabia out completely and then just attack them. So there's all kinds of things in the motion behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly. And, back to this whole no-fly zone thing, because, again, I want to reiterate that no-fly zone sounds palatable. It sounds like, okay. In fact, I was watching the full clip. I'm going to play this clip here, which was a, what do you call it? Anyway, they called in, the Congress called in the dudes from the Senate Armed Services Committee called in some generals to ask them about, what's going on in Syria. Can we do a no-fly zone? one of the senators was like, this is a Republican guy. He's like, yeah, I was talking with one of my colleagues, and we're advocating a no-fly zone in Syria, but my colleague on my Democratic colleague wanted to call it something else, something that was a little more palatable, because even no-fly zone is now kind of taboo because everyone knows what happened with the no-fly zone in Libya. So, like, these people in the Senate Armed Services Committee, they're actively looking for new names to rename these actions to make them more palatable to the American people, because American people, apathetic and ignorant as they are, they don't like their troops going in and fighting wars overseas when the perception is that they're not gonna win and there's no clear objective and that kind of thing. So the American people, they are anti-war, but they can be tricked into supporting wars and supporting military actions around the world. Just like, Claire, you mentioned in 2013 when we were able to be part of that movement that helped stop the overthrow of the Syrian government that the United States wanted to do. All of a sudden, ISIS was a huge problem. They changed up their rhetoric and said, okay, we're not going to go fight the Syrian government directly, but we still got to go to Syria because now we got to fight ISIS. So they're terrorists, and since you guys, 9/11 and all that stuff, terrorism, and the American people were like, okay, go ahead, no big deal. Go, as long as you're going to fight terrorists, no boots on the ground, go for it. We're not worried about that. So, that's what these guys are actively trying to do, is come up with new rhetoric that is more easy to sell to people.
Sorry to interrupt, Nick, but I always, when breaking news happens, they're saying that we just knocked out some Yemeni radars in response to the supposed missile attack on the destroyer. So we've directly attacked Yemen now.
Oh, great. Because, I can't...
Iran is next.
Can't believe the Yemenis would try to shoot back at us after we've been drone bombing and supporting the Saudi war criminals bombing their country for the past year and a half. So back to this Syria no-fly zone. Here's the thing, and this is why this could turn into a direct war with Russia, because people say, oh well, Syrian no-fly zone, that's just Syria. Syria is a little country. They're pretty much powerless and they're killing their own people. I mean, no big deal. We can do a no-fly zone. We can bomb them. Here's the thing. As tensions have been turning sour between the United States and Russia, ties have basically reached an all-time low. Like Claire was saying, I mean, we're now back to what we were during the Cold War, even at the height of the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis. We're at that point. So Russia has been moving its highly advanced anti-aircraft systems into Syria. I think they're called like the S-200, S-300, S-400 systems. Very, very advanced systems, which the Russians claim could even take down stealth fighters. So the Russians have moved a bunch of this equipment into Syria, and they have their personnel on the ground. Russia has publicly stated that they have personnel on the ground. Of course, they have people operating these systems, and they've also got troops embedded near the front lines in Syria. Now, Russia has announced, after what happened with the U.S. supposedly accidentally bombing the Syrian troops when they were about to fight ISIS, and then ISIS was able to take that mountaintop. I mean, call it a coincidence, but call it what you want. Ever since that happened, Russia said, look, we're putting our guys in there now, and next time you guys think about bombing the Syrian troops, just remember, you're going to be bombing Russian troops as well, and we will retaliate against you. And so they have these anti-aircraft systems over there now in Syria, and Russia already said that if they feel like the U.S. is about to bomb the Syrian army, that they will take down American jets and American bombers and American drones that are flying around in Syria. Okay? Now, in order to create a no-fly zone, which is what Hillary Clinton wants to do, that means that we would have to go over there and try to bomb Russia's anti-aircraft defenses. And Russia said that they're going to shoot back. So, I mean, this is literally a situation where trying to make a no-fly zone in Syria would actually cause a huge-ass war between the United States and Russia directly, which is something that just has never happened. We've never fought Russia. The Cold War went on for a long time, but we never actually directly fought Russia. I mean, there was a bunch of proxy wars, Vietnam, Korea, I mean, you name it. We fought dozens of proxy wars.
We couldn't have won World War I or World War II without them.
Exactly. I mean, the Russians did the majority of the heavy lifting in World War II. The Russians, you know, everybody acts like it was the Allies that went in and we stormed the beach in France, and we did. But the Russians really did like 70% of the heavy lifting over there to defeat the Nazis.
They lost 21 million men.
21 million people.
Can you fathom that?
21 million Russians died. I mean, how many Americans died in World War II? Like
I don't even know, at 2.5 at most. That may even be way exaggerated, but nowhere near that.
I mean, yeah, Stalin was a horrible guy, but let's face it, the Russians beat the Nazis, and we took the credit for it.
But the thing that's really astonishing, though, here is that we have to keep in perspective is that most of this entire buildup is because of U.S. aggression, where the United States, you know, the politicians saying, well, Russia has been aggressive, they've done this, they've done that, they've done this and that. The U.S.-backed NATO coalition has been building up along the border of Russia for a very long time, under some, like, this rather unfounded premise that Russia is going to invade its former satellite states in Eastern Europe. And it's totally unfounded. There are thousands of NATO troops now amassed along Russia's border. And Russia sees that as kind of a threat to its sovereignty. And it makes sense. And the U.S. has been touting this Russian aggression narrative, which makes no sense and is not founded in any sort of form of reality whatsoever. So really, like, by Hillary Clinton saying that, like, you know, Russia did the hacks or whoever did the hacks, we are actually provoking this war. The United States government is provoking a potential nuclear war. That cannot be understated enough. We are playing an absolutely dangerous game. And granted, these countries, Russia and China and North Korea and Iran, and you know, they have been, you know, long-standing traditional quote-unquote enemies, or at least foes. And we have had a long-standing narrative where they are supposedly these evil empires that want to take over the United States. But if you look back, particularly in this most recent theater of what's going on, it's the United States that has been the provocateur. We are doing this. We are provoking this potentially nuclear war. We are making this happen. And if we as the people don't stand up and say, hey, you know, our government has stepped out of line and this is freaking ridiculous, we're going to be in a place where the entire planet is endangered by what our government has done. And the reason that our government is doing this is because it's the last vestiges of this empire, this imperialistic empire that is obviously dying out. You know, these larger secondary superpowers like Russia and China are trying to find different economic means to get away from the petrodollar. They're trying to be independent of the U.S., and the U.S. does not like that. It's all about hegemony. And as they move away from this imperialistic American hegemony, the U.S. realizes that it's in its last superpower stages. And instead of turning tail and walking away and kind of reducing itself like, say, Great Britain did, and just being like, well, okay, we kind of lost, and instead of like going down in a bloody mess, we'll just kind of retreat, we're trying desperately to hold on and save face and be obstinate in the face of everything that stands against it. It's ridiculous, it's unnecessary, and it's perilous. And we're all going to pay the price if we're not careful.
They want to go out with a bang, don't they?
Yes.
You bring Great Britain up. That's a great example of what the U.S. should be doing. We should be just slowly start closing down our bases and slowly start saying, okay, we can't maintain 20 trillion, or, you know, the actual amount of liabilities the United States has is exponentially higher than what Trump, you know, the 20 trillion Trump talks about. That's nothing. That's nothing compared to the true liabilities that the United States has on its books. But, you know, you're right. I mean, it's this big empire that we've been led to believe, and, you know, I know a lot of people still believe it, especially all these, you know, Colin Kaepernick haters that are like mad about someone not standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance. They believe that our empire that is in about 100 countries and we have about 1,000 military installations around the world, they actually believe that we're over there. We're the first empire in the world spreading freedom. We're actually like, the only reason we have troops in 100 different countries is because we're trying to bring them fair elections, right? even though our own elections are like completely shit. Our own elections need to be thrown in the trash and like they need to be completely redone because the whole shit is rigged. But no, believe our president, because we're just over there in all these countries making sure they got good elections. I mean, it's the biggest joke of all time. But for those of us, for anyone listening tonight that thinks that we're overstating the crisis that we're dealing with right here, I want to play a clip because this was at the end of my article, and I hope everyone got a chance to watch it. This is Marine General Joseph Dunford, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He's basically the guy in charge of what's going on in Syria right now with the U.S. operation. This is a general that, like, you could actually tell by this guy. He was, like, arguing with John McCain as well. You could actually tell he's trying, like, he's doing what they tell him to do, but he actually does have our best. He does have, like, good intentions, quote unquote, even though he's over there and doing things that he probably doesn't agree with in Syria. This is what he had to say just last month, and I'm going to play the clip.
For Syria, what about the option of controlling the airspace so that barrel bombs cannot be dropped?
All the options.
What do you think of that option, sir?
Right now, Senator, for us to control all of the airspace in Syria would require us to go to war against Syria and Russia. That's a pretty fundamental decision that certainly I'm not going to make.
So, I mean, there you have it. That's right out of the mouth of our general that's running the show over there right now in the Middle East. He's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I mean, this is like one of the highest ranking guys in the military. And he's saying, if you guys want to do what Hillary Clinton wants to do and what the Obama administration has been talking about doing, well, get ready to fucking fight Russia. And so, as you can tell by his comments, he's like, that's not a question that we can just joke around about and take lightly and just say, yeah, no fly zone because it sounds good. No, I mean, he's like, this is very, very serious what you guys are talking about here. And if you go back and watch the full clip, this is just, his answer. The senator, he's the guy I was talking about earlier that was talking about rebranding the no-fly zone to make it more palatable. The guy was just like, lightly talking about, yeah, I've been advocating a no-fly zone. This general was like, dude, reality check, bro. Like, you have no effing clue what you're talking about. It's crazy. It's crazy.
But that's why, like, honestly, I would like to reiterate, I really feel, I've been throwing around the idea of this anti-war campaign for a while, but that's why I feel like this no war with Russia campaign would be actually really vital right now. I mean, this is perhaps the most dangerous point that the United States has been in decades. And if we allow the government to keep posturing and preferring this bullshit that Russia is some threat, we are going to end up in war, and very likely nuclear war, and there will be no coming back from that. There really won't. And I don't think that people realize, we've been focusing on Syria, and I understand the situation in Syria is it's atrocious. It's horrible. But the bigger threat is the United States government and its aggression against Russia, because Russia has some very powerful allies, and because we're poking a powder keg for no reason.
Exactly, and Hillary Clinton talks lightly about this, and she's talking about throwing a lit match into a powder keg. That's what Syria is. Syria is a powder keg. I mean, last time I checked, there was about 70 different countries. 70 different countries in the coalition in Syria, meaning there's 70 different countries bombing the place. It's a powder keg. I mean, Syria is the place where World War III, if it happens, is going to start. That's where it starts. That's where it's.
I would not discount the Asia Pacific theater.
Thank you.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.
Ozzy's Cape